Hi, welcome to those of you that are follow us at EXIT Realty HGM. We have our kind of COVID-19 response today, and just want to talk through some things. I'm just gonna talk and kind of let people notice that we're live right now, and then we'll get into some real specifics about what it's like as a small business. And there's 3 small businesses represented with us today that I'll introduce in just a second. But what we're doing as a small business in response to COVID-19, we exist and operate in Rock and Dane counties in Wisconsin, so south central Wisconsin, as in the real estate space. We're coming to you on EXIT Realty HGM's Facebook Live page, and I've got also our sister companies along with us, Property Revival Construction, that we're going to hear from today, and we're going to hear from Artisol Design as well, another one of our sister companies. And what we're trying to do today is explain not only our specific response to COVID-19, but also give some insight and background to maybe some successes inside of that as small business owners, some challenges, and even some fears, because it's a real struggle for everybody to navigate the landscape of the pandemic and how to respond as small business people. And we thought it would be interesting not only for the 5 of us as a group to get together and talk as we have been through this, but to also share our conversation with the public. And we're hopeful to get some people watching and interacting with us. So feel free to leave questions and interact any way you can. Maybe you're a small business owner. Maybe you have questions or fears you want to bring up, and we can talk through that. With you. So I think we've kind of allowed the live feed to go a little bit here, and we'll get into our content right now. I'm going to introduce everybody first, and maybe we can just share who you are and what you do. I'll start with John Schneider from Artisol Design, who's also an owner in EXIT Realty HGM. John, if you'd like to say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. So first of all, thanks for getting together here on the call, and for those of you out there listening, I hope you're doing well and being safe and practicing these new rules that we have around us. But I run Artisol Design. I also am an owner in both Property Revival and EXIT HGM. I also own a company called Mixtech Pavement Solutions that's in the manufacturing business, and I'm dealing with lots of issues here, obviously, as well as we all are, whether it's employment related, being able to get to job sites, supply chain issues, and that kind of thing. And we're all here to just kind of have those discussions and see if we can shed some light on our challenges and our way through those.
Okay, thanks, John. Jerry Walls from Property Revival Construction. He's actually on a job site now. Jerry, if you just want to quick introduce yourself and say hello.
Hi, guys. I'm owner of Artisol Design as well, EXIT Realty. Out here on a job site working and hoping this broadcast comes live and people either hunker down or doing the same. We're just trying to get everyone's insight from field crew and labor forces out there and what they're doing and how you're adapting to this as a small business, and letting you know that Property Revival is still here and we're still working.
We've got James Graham joining us, who's a real estate attorney, also an owner in EXIT Realty HGM. James, you want to say hello?
Yeah, hello. I am an attorney with accession law, so I'm looking at this situation on behalf of a lot of clients and who have particular personnel and contract questions and concerns, and just trying to figure out how to navigate through those right now. And then as an owner of EXIT Realty HGM, also looking at those very same questions, but with a different hat on as one of the people that has to make a business decision as opposed to just strictly a legal one. I look forward to this conversation.
Thanks, James. And our final owner, Ron Williams, who's our broker here at HGM, has a lot of history in the real estate industry, seen a lot of different markets. Welcome, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if you guys are going to hear me very well or not, but we're working through it. So, yeah, I've been through a few of these interesting times for real estate. So obviously this one is unprecedented as far as what we have, but just looking forward to bringing some perspective to the whole thing. So
Great.
hopefully you can hear me.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, no, that sounded good. So basically what I'd like to start with is just kind of our initial general response. Then I'm going to turn it over to our owners here, and they're going to talk through their different perspectives and their different challenges. And that's kind of the interest we want to bring to our community right now, is that there are no easy solutions. This isn't a political issue. It's a pandemic. This isn't something we've experienced. It's something new. And as small businesses, it's putting a huge stress on our ecosystems. But first and foremost, as a company at HGM, we have to operate with the safety of people out in front. And so the information we take is usually from the CDC, the World Health Organization, our federal and local government, our local chambers. So we've responded that way. Last Sunday is when we had all employees officially go remote and closed our facilities. So we were as early as we could be in that, we felt. And really what we're focused on at HGM, and I think what you'll hear from the conversation today, is that we're honoring and making quick responses to several groups of people. It's our staff, our clients, our business and related associates, so our like lending partners and closing partners, and these people, home inspectors that work with us, our community, which is you all, kind of watching us today, and who we think about, and then our industry as a whole. So those are the people we have in mind, and it all gets back to that family and the families that we impact. Back in 2015, there was a handful of families in HGM. Now we have 40. And so we have a bigger responsibility to their safety, to their well-being, to their care, and to the business that we have and we operate. And I think what you're going to hear from today through the problems, and I'm going to turn over to John Schneider here in just a minute to sort of talk through some points that he's seeing in design and his companies, is that, as you've read on the web and some entrepreneurs that you follow, we've been dealt a whole bunch of lemons here. This is hard. And the old cliche about when you're given a lemon, you got to make lemonade. This is a hard one. This is a lot of those lemons, and it's going to take grit. It's going to take perseverance as small business owners. But we've got to stick together and find solutions, because really what this is about is problem solving. Nobody has all the answers, and we have some fears related to that. I think I'm going to open with that. John, if you could talk through first just some fears that we have faced in our conversations here at HGM, and that you're facing at Artisol, and you're seeing on the business landscape of small businesses. What are some of those fears that small businesses are sort of consuming but have to mitigate? They can't lead with fear.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for small business, after you can look at how do you manage your employees and make sure you're taking care of their well-being, albeit financially or emotionally, or medically here, when we've got this disease in the forefront. But it's how do you manage cash? I mean, a lot of businesses who are in our situations that are smaller are dealing with influx and outgoing cash happening consistently. And if you get to a point where the cash isn't coming in yet, you've got employees and vendors and rent and all those things. It doesn't take too long before the cash dries up. So it's important for small businesses like us to figure out what we call a burn rate. How long is it going to take you to run out of capital so that you no longer can function as a business? And that is obviously, I think, that for a small business owner, the biggest fear outside of just our people and making sure that we're taking care of our people. But how do you get through it? And manage the amount of cash so when the economy starts again, that you have the capital to fire the engines back up and go again. And I think this environment we're in is changing so rapidly. I think even at the end of last week, going into this week, we kind of thought, hey, we can continue a business as usual. Obviously, it's unusual, but it is trying to get things done. And that's changing and changed this week, what we can do and what we will end up having to deal with over the coming weeks.
Yeah, that's the number one. We've been involved in some chamber gatherings, I guess, teleconferencing, both in the Madison Chamber and the Janesville Chamber, Forward Janesville, and that brought together, many people, small business folks that are working through these issues. And the number one concern for everybody is, how do we cover the where we are right now, like you're talking about, John, and then we have this unknown finish line, and then how do we cover the finances there? We're not huge companies that have access to the many, a lot of funds in different ways, or have a burn rate, as you say, of maybe 13 months out or 15 months out. Our burn rates are much shorter than that, present all kinds of staffing concerns, or can some businesses, restaurant and bar owners right now, can they even stay in business? These are real concerns. Jerry, are you seeing anything in the construction industry that is sharing kind of a similar fear there, or what are the fears you're facing there?
So being a builder and remodeler and being in people's homes is a challenge, especially with schools closing down and a lot of people taking to their homes with their children because there's no daycare, and us being inside their homes and exposing them to potential virus is a concern of ours. So we're taking extraordinary steps to ensure the safety of our clients by extra cleaning, disinfecting, tenting off areas. But the biggest concern that I'm seeing right now is building and remodeling is a draw-based business that's paid to us at the completion of a phase. Not being able to complete phases stops income from coming in, and most builders here are what we call receivable heavy in this industry. We have a lot of bills out there, and we are receivables heavy based on the amount of work we can complete and forecast for our business to take that money in as it comes down the line. A lot of construction companies aren't a cash-heavy company. They come in and we do the job, we put our margins in place, and hopefully we make the money that we're looking to, but rarely does it shake out that way in a remodel because there's so many unknowns. My biggest concern, other than my employees here at Property Revival and Artisol, is that we do have workman comp and unemployment policies that we've paid throughout the years, but I deal with a lot of truck and ladder guys that are just them and a ladder, and they're exempt in workman's comp and unemployment because they're sole proprietors of their business. And when this shuts down for us and we're unable to pay them the draws for completion of work, they have nowhere to turn to get income for their families. I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that with the professionals that I have. I have great craftsmen that work alongside us in the field. These guys have families and children, and I'm doing my best to keep people afloat. Like this house here today is unoccupied. I'm going to have a very select few people here. I'm trying to get as many materials I can to the job site delivered in advance so that if I can go to the job sites that are unoccupied, I can keep these materials flowing in case they shut down the national distribution of products to my people. And that's all I can do right now to ensure the survival of our subcontractors in the field who are truck and ladder guys and don't have the resources or the amenities that a W-2 employee would have in this trade.
Yeah, and those are real issues that, as owners and business leaders, we got to have real talk about that because it's our responsibility to do the best we can, like you were saying, Jerry, to find every way possible to keep our folks employed and to keep them working. And it's hard because we're up against that financial stress as well. And then you sprinkle in the unknown timeline that we're up against. And it presents a difficulty to make decisions. So this is part of the reason we're doing this call, is to kind of be a little bit vulnerable out there and to offer the conversation to a lot of people that we're all sort of facing as small business owners and entrepreneurs and just community members, a lot of the same issues, and they're real, and it is a moment to solve problems and not lead with fear. So James, what are you seeing? Anything from just a fear factor with the virus in your attorney world?
Well, it's the issues that we've talked about earlier this week are continuing, and that uncertainty that everybody has mentioned in the field, because the regulations are changing, the law is changing, and I mean, you start with assumptions have been blown up, right? So you've got cases where we call force majeure, meaning there's something outside that has made the performance of a contract impossible. That's going on all over the place. You got contracts that either side can perform. We got expectations that nobody can live up to. And then in the meanwhile, part of it, as everybody's been talking about, we've got this concern that we've got to take care of people some way or another. We've got a way to take care of people. Our employees, our clients, our families, our friends, and so that's what we keep coming back around to is how are we going to deal with taking care of people, and how can we do it if there's no money? We've been looking, at the SBA guidance that's coming out that there may be funds available, different sources that we might have to borrow, just some way to patch over holes in the revenue so that we can make it. And then from a legal point of view, I'm trying to figure out what we can do contractually, what we can do to end the broken contracts, which I'm having daily deals, clients call me today, we've got a deal that's just not going to close now.
Right.
And so then what happens? Then that person that was expecting to buy another house and they were selling theirs, well, they can't do that. They got nowhere to go, or whatever, those kind of stories. And what are we going to do about it next? So that's exactly, that's what I'm wrestling with the most. And then, as I said, on top of that, you've got regulations that are changing fairly rapidly. We're just talking about the Family Medical Leave Act, and it never used to apply to small businesses. All of a sudden, on Tuesday or Wednesday, the president signed a law that said, anybody under 500 employees now has certain of these elements that they have to live up to. You never had to plan for that. You don't have any revenue saved or set aside for it. Revenue has been shut off because jobs are not coming in, and yet you're now got this new mandated potential obligation. How does that work? It just doesn't add up. So then we got to come up with a plan B or a plan C on all those kind of things, and that's really why we've been having these conversations.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, and that's the thing, like, there is this fear, and then there's the reality, and so we're trying to, you keep your folks safe. That was our first thing, and then, teach them ways and give them ideas to go home and keep their families and infrastructure safe. And then you got to come back to the business as owners and say, okay, now how do we keep this business safe? And what are the protocols to move business forward facing all these fears? And so one thing we're doing right now is studying the market. Like I just did an internal video and document this morning to our folks about, what's happening. What is happening with rule changes, but then also anecdotally, what are we seeing happen? And we've had 2 deals die recently related to the virus. One was a military relocation. The government has ended any military relocation, so that ended a real estate deal in Dane County. And then we had a Rock County deal, have to be canceled because of a job loss related to COVID-19. And so there's there. But I will also balance that with, we still have accepted offers coming. We still have a lot of showings on our listings. We still have buyers that want to go see things. And so it's a really interesting time. And I want Ron, now I want you to chime in here about what you're seeing with market conditions related to the fear, right? And the real danger here is to lead with fear. I can't emphasize that enough. What we have to lead with is problem solving and reacting with fact, and really, nurturing and keeping all of it safe, including our business, including our families. And part of that safety responsibility we have as business owners is to pierce through the fear and say what's really happening. These are bad things that are happening, but what's the reality, and how do we preserve business? Ron, what are you, from a market fear, but then reality, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so fear is interesting. I think what happens when we have this recessionary talk and all of that, we automatically default back to 2008 and what happened in the housing crash at that time. And the reality is, every recession that's happened prior to 2008, real estate went up. And in 2008, the crash was real estate because of really bad fundamentals. There were people who did some bad things, whatever. We don't have to go down that road. So let's look at today. What's the reality of our real estate market? And the reality is we still have a very short supply, and we have a very large demand. And our demand goes up every day. So that hasn't changed. And so one message to get to your sellers is, let's still put your houses on the market. The first place people look for a property is on the internet. They're all home now. Let's have your property out there. Let's make sure we're doing our job marketing those properties as agents and listing agents. But get your buyers, make sure they're looking, because we are getting offers. Offers are coming. Deals are closing. The title companies are doing things they have to close. There's my new favorite acronym is RON, and that's remote. I can't think of the online notary. So you can do. I can close loans for you. That's great. But no, these are, the state of Wisconsin has approved it. A few of the title companies have instituted it, so nobody has to show up for any closings. Title companies can close and they can make it happen. So closings can still happen. But what is happening is, Brian explained a couple of deals that weren't able to close. What I want you to do when those things happen is get a hold of me. There may be ways to salvage those deals. Talk with our sellers, talk with our buyers. If the buyers have jobs that are going to come back after all this is over, which the majority of those jobs are going to come back, we can get these deals put together. It's just going to take a little longer. And I think everybody can be on board with that. And I just want to touch on rates real quick. I got a couple other things, but I just want to touch on interest rates. Barry Abib is a guy who I follow very closely, and he has this stat. There's $11 trillion. The mortgage industry is $11 trillion industry. Of those, $5 trillion of those could be refinanced and get cash out with a lower interest rate today. And that's what's happening in our market. So our rates aren't seeing quite as low a rate as the reflection of the interest rate that went down. Just hang on for a little bit, watch it as mortgage companies and banks end up, get rid of their pipeline and get through it. You're going to see these rates go down, and they're just going to continue to stay in this low threes for quite a while. So don't let your people panic about anything on the rates. The rates are going to stay low for a while. You're going to be in those low threes, and it's going to be okay.
In fact, Ron, I watched that same video. Sorry to interrupt you, but I watched that same video, and Barry had mentioned that basically, to some degree, these companies, the mortgage companies, are holding rates a little bit higher to slow down the flow of rate refis to the marketplace. And right now, there's so many more mortgages being applied for than the capacity of the mortgage loan origination system. So likely there'll be as many loans not being done this year as they're going to do because they just don't have the capacity. And that is, like you were saying, the cash out. If people are able to cash out of their mortgage, pull some equity out at a lower interest rate, that'll also stimulate the economy. It's not the best way for us to be gaining, sales, by people pulling equity out of their home, but it is a stimulus that is available to us in the marketplace, and it likely will keep things moving as we come through this emergency we're in now.
Yeah, and I want to skip past fear things right now and really talk about how we're solving problems as business owners, because I think that's the biggest value add we can give the community. I think that's the biggest value add we can give our families and our clients and other small business owners, is to learn from this. And figure out what are the solutions that keep us moving forward. John, what are some maybe processes you're putting in place to just not look at it as fear, as you're saying, but as what are you doing to just solve some of these problems that you're facing inside of the design company or as a real estate investor, or just maybe advice you have for other small business leaders?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that we are so lucky, we don't really realize how lucky we are because this happened before this pandemic, it is the technology that we have, this meeting that we're having right now, to be able to have a discussion and stay in communication with our people instead of just having an over the phone conversation. You can see the mannerisms of somebody, you can see that face. If we're social distancing and we're not getting these interactive moments, I mean, I can only imagine the depression it would lead to at some point if you're not willing to interact. And although this isn't, physical human contact, this is about as close as you're going to get. And we're able to have these video conferences with our staff and our team and, have a laugh and interact almost in a way that we didn't do before. I mean, seeing people at their houses and their dogs jumping up on their lap, as you're having a business meeting, there's a little bit of joy you can gather out of that. And some of the things that we're being forced into are teaching us a better way to some degree, or a new way to do business and to reach out to our clients or reach out to our team members. And I think those little things are incredible, just as far as that human interaction. Additionally, just the cleaning of our office, simple things, wiping down doorknobs with a disinfectant every day. We had a deep clean in our office done right as this happened on Friday. We had somebody come in and deep clean our office. We're scheduling appointments for one client to come into our showroom at a time, just to have them meet with the designer, practicing social distancing in those meetings. Doing our best to wipe down the materials as we're using them, to show them. I mean, there's all these little things kind of add up to just having a bit more confidence that we're going to be able to stay healthy and in business. And whether they're actually doing anything or not, only time will tell. But it's taking these little steps to just show that, hey, we're being a steward of our current situation to provide as healthy of an environment as we can.
Yeah, Brian, I want to second that first point John made and commend you again on what you've done, because I think it's so critical to keep in touch with everybody, with all the agents and staff, because when there's a situation of fear, that silence it amplifies the fear. But just talking is great. And this meeting that we're having right now, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this but for the virus, but it's pretty cool. And now we can see that, the house Jerry's got for sale there, and he can give us a virtual tour if we want, see what he's, where he hit his hand with the hammer or something, or whatever he's done recently. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, it's made us rethink our businesses in a lot of ways. One thing I've been reading about the potential positives of this experience on our nation are, really forcing us into learning how to be remote workers and to more accept that into our communities. John, you talked about all the technology we have, but, the number of businesses that actually, use that technology to create a remote work environment is kind of small. It's shockingly small. And a lot of the small businesses we've studied this week and their response on how to get people home quickly was really inspiring. The way that people are taking care of their community by being socially distant, the businesses that are really listening to our healthcare leaders saying, we're going to follow this and implement this at local levels to make sure we keep people safe and flatten the curve, hopefully, in the United States of this virus. What else, Jerry, what are some positives? What are some problem-solving measures? You mentioned some in the open, but as a construction person, I envision, and I've seen your construction sites, and they're, you've got the zipped up little room when you're painting, and you have masks, and you have some of these things, but when you have a lot of pressure on you now to prevent the spread of a virus, what happens to the construction space when you're in other people's homes. You're sitting in a vacant home, but what happens in construction when you have to go to somebody's home that has their family living there? How does that impact it?
It's uncharted territory. We try to, have no raw boot touch the floor. Try to mask floors off as is, and everyday construction to be as clean and tidy and respectful of people's stuff as possible. But this is uncharted territory for us. With, like I said before, kids being home, families being home, we look for that relief during the day to try to get as much work done while people are at their jobs, kids are away at school, and having to tackle these labor issues with everyone being there. Dogs, kids, parents, all through this process, and protect them is a challenge. And it's an ongoing learning curve for us here at Property Revival Construction and the other construction companies we work with. I find that, one of the things that we're doing on the construction side, it's very hard for us to swing a hammer remotely from video chat. So we really, really need to be in there and say, we don't have this option of being in our homes and doing this. So, just basically getting me and John at Property Revival and Arsenal, I feel we got involved with this thing before it turned into an issue. We brought this to our staff. We brought this to our people, let them know that we have their best interests in mind. A lot of people have fears about the what's coming out from the federal government with the guidelines of under 50 employees, over 500 employees. Now it's basically anyone under 500 employees will be getting some relief and some pay, unless it's a hardship to the company and the company itself can't provide those incomes for families in the field. What I'm trying to do for my team and subcontractors is there's things that need to be get done all over the place here, and I'm kind of playing it by ear each day. A lot of my subcontractors have contracts on projects that go through the phase of construction. They have an electrician has a rough on the way in, and he has a finish on the way out, and I can't if we can't get to those phases, what I'm trying to do is take my field crew and my people basically to a T&M, which means a time and material basis. So I'm talking to my carpenters from other companies, and they're calling me on a weekly basis because there's still things that I have an obligation to perform. And as long as I can put them in unoccupied properties or with properties less than 10 people and manage the control and the virus set by the guidelines of our government and the CDC, I'm trying to do that. And we're just basically getting at trying to get at a little lower rate for our guys to keep them busy, to keep projects moving forward, to keep the fear of the financials unknown, letting them know that, hey, as a business owner and a family man and part of this community between real estate, construction, and design, that I'm doing my best to let my people know that I got their back and that I'm out here in the field with my crew today just to let them know that I won't put them in a situation that I wouldn't put myself in as well. I'm just bringing some positivity through leading by example and being on the forefront and on the front lines with my crew, implementing procedures and processes and letting them know that we'll make it work as long as everyone's willing to work with us.
Yeah, and Brian, we have very much stopped working inside of people's homes while occupied. We have one project where we have basically quarantined off the entire house that we're working in because the family is there. So, I mean, we're talking tarps from floor to ceiling. We've blocked off all the airways. Our guys are always coming in with a new set of rubber gloves. We've basically said there's in the construction industry, you get a few guys that smoke, and we've eliminated all smoking during the workday. There's no hand to mouth. So little things like that, that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to stay in vacant houses as much as possible. We do have, a half a dozen vacant houses that we're working on, and that's an easier thing to deal with. But the reality is we will run out of that, and we can only navigate around those vacant homes for so long.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about running out of it. One of the things we're facing as small business owners and leaders in the community is what you just said, which is we're going to run out of,
these issues. If you contact
deals.
us.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, sorry. We're going to run out. There's a fear there that you're going to, we don't have any more empty houses now. We have to get back into homes that have people in it. And really the restrictions on communities about social distancing may only get more stringent in the next few days or weeks here. preventing you essentially from even going into a situation like that. And so then, then as we've talked with other chamber members in our chambers in Madison and Janesville, who've put on some great teleconferencing and really gotten the conversation started about funding and how do you finance this delta. And I don't know, James, maybe you can chime in. I know, Ron, you've studied this, but these small business loans, SBA loans that are available now, we're starting to learn a little bit more about that. More information definitely came out this morning and last night about ways for small businesses to access funds so that burn rate that John Schneider talked about a little while ago can extend a little bit and we can survive maybe that push. I don't know if one of you can take that a little bit. What's out there? What are you seeing out there for small businesses right now to fund themselves?
We've been looking at small business loans since this started. Last early part on Monday, I got right on it, and Wisconsin just got declared net in an emergency status, and so I think can now apply. One of the problems that we have is we are the 30th, I believe, state that did it, and so the backlog of applications had already started before we ever had an opportunity to apply. Additionally, they are focusing on SBA loans for relief for people who already have an SBA loan and need to refinance that loan to stay afloat. So I do believe there's going to be some relief for small businesses like ours as time allows, but it may be maybe a little too late to some degree, or it may just take some time before we're able to actually execute a loan like that. I've been in the real estate investment business for the last 15 years. Luckily, I have some good banking partnerships, and I know that they're looking at making loans to small businesses faster than what the SBA may do, and hopefully they'll do it at rates that that will be competitive or will give us some real relief. There's also deferments that banks are already stepping on, deferring interest payments. Obviously, the new bill that came out where they're allowing a kind of a moratorium on foreclosures and evictions, that is a big issue for landlords because it's obviously making tenants have some relief, but that doesn't necessarily relieve the landlord who's still got to make a mortgage payment. I suspect that there will be some relief there. Obviously, this trickle up effect that would happen from relieving just a tenant will trickle up to the landlords, and that's going to be a concern for the small business owner who may have investment real estate out there. So we're all concerned with that, and hopefully there's relief across the board to help us through this.
Yeah, no, what you have to do, I think, again, to keep the communication open is critical. On the SBA question in particular, the rates look like the public announcements are the rates would be great. They're amortizing these over long periods. It all looks great, except you can't get it, right? So, but hopefully that process will be smoothed out, and that I wouldn't be at all surprised if we're not looking at one of those loans, probably several of them, in the various businesses that are represented here. But with respect to what John pointed out, so if you're a landlord, which many of us are, you've got tenants that may not be paying their rent, then what are you going to do? You've got to go to your lender and say, look, here's my situation, and I don't have really a whole lot of options here, so I'm going to need a deferment. Or in the case of if you're a tenant, so we've got businesses here that are commercial tenants, and we've gone to our landlord already and said, we may need to defer our rent payments for a while, reduce them or delay them or both, because there's just not there's not enough money to go around right now. So instead of just breaking those relationships and saying, I'm going to pay you zero, we can propose to pay what we can or take what we can from our tenants that still allows us to flow. But if they can't pay in full, you may have to seriously consider, just reducing their rent for a while because they just don't have any other choice. And in a lot of cases, we're looking at that, which is, what is my alternative? Because it's just not the case that I can stick to a hard line. I don't have any good alternative, so I'm going to try to make a reasonable deal that both sides can live with, and we're basically renegotiating all of our contracts across the board.
Yeah, I want to, we should probably wrap this up. We've been going, and we certainly appreciate it. Looks like we had quite a good viewership and support that way, so we thank everybody for that. And I'm sure a lot of this will be watched, later. Some of these live videos don't get as much viewership live as they do afterwards. But, basically what I hear, the message, and I want you guys to think about responding. I want each of your responses from this. Like, what are the positives? What is the hope? What makes you feel optimistic about this scenario as a small business leader? That's what we're going to go for in a minute. But what I hear, and we've all experienced this, we had the initial information, and we were sort of not knowing. This is kind of late last week. Well, how do we behave? There's still people out at bars and restaurants and this kind of thing. And then by Saturday night, Sunday, it was like, oh man. And that's when we made the decision, shut our offices, people are remote, that kind of thing. Cleaning, be socially responsible, socially distant, all this stuff. Participate in what the smart scientists are telling us about this, right? And so then it became that reactionary, and then there's fear with that. And then that became more of this problem solving and getting into it. And now, we've got all this information. There's still a little bit of fear. There's still a little bit of problem solving going on. But what are the hopes? What are the promise that you see of tomorrow and beyond that we face as small business leaders? And what are the positives here? The light in the darkness for you guys?
For us in the remodel industry, I find this restraint and this tighten is getting everyone to really be aware of their surroundings, and this change can change people's life in an instant. Being aware of mismanagement of materials, making sure that we're conscious of the person next to us, making sure that we're aware of our use and our waste. I think that's the biggest thing in the construction industry that I'm finding. We're trying to utilize and get as many materials out as possible for the fear of disruption in distribution of materials and production of materials. And it's bringing a consciousness across the board, I think, to families in their homes about the consumption and waste and what they're doing with their own stuff at their house and in the field on the projects and what we're throwing away and what we can reuse and how we can utilize these things. I'm looking back at my grandparents and their grandparents and how they utilized every single thing. And as I get my family hunkered down for these tough times, I'm remembering some of the things that I had forgotten that I utilized as a child growing up in a family of 14 kids on the farm, and how we made do with little as possible and everyone was happy. I hope that everyone gathers this information, is a little conscious about their neighbor and the consumption and waste of what the things that are using and how important it is to look forward to the future and save.
Ron, more positives from you looking forward?
Yeah, I've hit the highlights of real estate is in good shape. The banks are in good shape. So I'm just looking forward to people getting back out there selling real estate. I've got my my flappy hat on and the happier times. It's a lot of fun to, if you take this time and do what you're supposed to do, and that's work on your family, work on those people that are close to you, and then call those clients of yours and your sphere, and just call the people that are important to you and let them know you care. And we actually get to slow down and take the time and do that with people. I think that's a really great positive. We get to slow down, take the time, and appreciate the people in our lives, and go find your floppy hats that you had lost. So that's exciting for me.
John and James, what do you have for positives there?
Well, go ahead, James.
Go, John.
All right. So my big thing is comes back to around being able to spend time with families. I think back, I've been a workaholic for the last 15 years, and my kids have been growing up inside of that, and being able to sequester myself with my children is a pretty it's a blessing. It's not the way that I wish we would have had to do it, but it's great. And I think that the lack of social interaction will help us understand how great it is to be able to socially interact. And I think I've seen a lot of kindness coming out of people already, and I feel that this could be something that could really bring humanity together. I've seen such a political divide for so long, potentially that this could help mend that fence instead of split it. And the biggest thing that I see overall, it's an old saying that this too shall pass. We will make it. And whenever you go through something that tests the limits of your strength and your ingenuity, you always come out stronger on the other end. You just need to survive through it, and we will. So this too shall pass.
James, what do you got for positives kind of looking through?
Yeah, that's great, John. I think it's perspective. You never would have imagined 2 months ago the wheels to come off like this, and you would have thought all in terms of gloom and doom, and then here we are, and we're getting through. So it does help you put into perspective what you really need, what you really want, and what's really important.
Yeah, for me, I do agree with you guys. I think that it gets back to grit, perseverance, and understanding that we're in the moment of solving problems, and we will get through it. There's going to be pain, but we will get through this. And it gets back to one of our values, which is help. You know, initially in this process, related to how can we help was how can we help our community limit the spread of this virus, and how can we use business to help do that. And so we clean our facilities, we go remote, those sorts of things. And then the next helping point for us this week as owners and community, what value are we providing back to our staff to help them get through it, and our clients that we're involved in? How do we help them and continually add value to them, nurture them, make them feel safe, and using business to do that? And then it gets right back to all the personal level. How are we helping our friends and family and our closest people, and really learning to be a better community through this? So I thank you guys so much. I think this was valuable for me. I hope it was valuable for others. But these are the conversations we got to keep going in our community, and I hope people can take it with them into the conversations that are having. So thank you very much for being part of our Small Business Owners Teleconference. And stay safe, stay distant, and stay positive, I think, is one of the messages we've had.
All right,
today.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.